It started like any other week. I thought I was just sharing a room with my cousin Liam. Simple, right? But nothing could have prepared me for the change that night. He'd been away for years, always living in his own world, until now, back under the same roof. He was different, more confident, more magnetic. The moment he stepped in, everything shifted. And as I looked into his eyes that night, I realized this wasn't going to be just a visit. Something was about to change, and I couldn't look away. At first, it was just a feeling, something small, barely noticeable, but persistent. It started with the little things. Liam wasn't the same guy I remembered. His presence, once something I could easily ignore, had now taken root in the space around me. It was as if he had always belonged there, even when he didn't. He'd been away for years, but now he was here, walking around like he owned the place, making himself right at home. The noise he brought with him filled the house. The music, the phone calls, the endless energy that buzzed through the walls. I wasn't used to it. I liked quiet, my playlists, my routines. But somehow, Liam made it feel different, like he brought something else with him, something that couldn't be ignored. He had always been this confident, larger-than-life presence, the kind of guy people gravitated toward, the one who knew how to make everyone laugh, even when it wasn't funny. But now, there was something more to him. He was older, sure, but it was more than that. His once boyish charm had turned into something magnetic, something I couldn't shake. The way his hair fell messily over his eyes, the way his smile seemed to make everything else fade into the background. I tried to ignore it, to focus on the things I always focused on, my schoolwork, my music, my quiet. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't help but notice him. I'd watch him as he walked through the house, shirtless in the mornings, his body a stark reminder of just how much had changed. It wasn't just his appearance, his presence, his energy had a way of disrupting everything. And it wasn't like it used to be. It wasn't just Liam being Liam. It was something else, something I didn't know how to label. And every time he brushed past me in the hallway, his touch lingering just a moment too long, my heart would race, and I'd tell myself it didn't mean anything. But deep down, I knew it did. There was this strange tension that started building, a quiet undercurrent of something I couldn't explain. It was subtle at first, like the small gestures, his knee pressing against mine on the couch, or how he leaned in just a little too close when we were talking. He was always touching me, and I was always trying to brush it off like it didn't matter. But it did. I could feel it in my bones, in the way my skin tingled when he was near. I told myself he was just being playful. That's who he was. Always the flirty, confident guy who had no idea the effect he was having on me. But then came the moment when everything shifted. One night I was lying in bed, just trying to clear my head, when the thoughts started pouring in. Thoughts I hadn't let myself acknowledge before. I'd been pushing them down, trying to ignore how he made me feel. But that night, I couldn't push them away any longer. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. The way his eyes lingered just a second too long, like there was something more there, something unsaid. And as I lay there, trying to calm my racing thoughts, I realized that I couldn't deny it anymore. The next morning, Liam dropped a bombshell on me. He casually mentioned that he'd dreamt about me. I laughed it off, but inside my stomach twisted. What did that even mean? Why would he dream about me? And why was I feeling this way? This way that made my heart race every time he looked at me. He wasn't supposed to be making me feel this way. He was my cousin. This wasn't supposed to be happening, but the tension kept growing. It wasn't loud or obvious. It wasn't a big fight or a dramatic moment. It was just this quiet, unspoken thing that lingered between us. And I couldn't help but wonder if Liam felt it too. There was something different in the way he treated me, something softer, more genuine, more... It wasn't the teasing or the jokes anymore. It was real. And I was afraid. Afraid of what it meant. Afraid of how I was reacting. Afraid of what it might mean for both of us. I kept telling myself that it was nothing, that it would pass. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop feeling the weight of his presence in the room, the heat of his touch, the way everything felt just a little bit more intense when he was around. It was as if he was drawing me in, and I was powerless to stop it. And then came the conversation, the one we hadn't planned for, but both knew was coming. The one where we finally had to confront what was happening between us. I don't know what made us talk, but there it was. This moment of vulnerability that cracked open something inside both of us. He admitted that he didn't feel weird around me, even in silence. That there was something about me that made him feel like he could be himself, like he could just exist, without the masks we all wear for the world. And that's when I knew. He felt it too. That same thing I'd been feeling, that same pull, that same connection. It was a moment of clarity, but also of chaos. Because as much as we wanted to acknowledge it, we didn't know what to do with it. Neither of us had the answers, and the uncertainty hung in the air, thick and heavy. But there was something undeniably real between us, something we couldn't deny, no matter how much we tried. And in that moment, I stopped pretending. I stopped pretending it wasn't there. Stopped pretending it didn't matter. Because it did. It mattered more than anything. But where do we go from here? That was the question neither of us knew how to answer. What happens next? The future was uncertain, and as much as we both wanted to know what would happen next, neither of us was ready to face it. But for the first time, it didn't matter. Because in that moment, we knew we had to take the next step, whatever it was, even if we didn't have all the answers. We were both on this path now, and there was no going back. And that's where everything changed. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was charged. And as we stood there, not saying a word, I knew we were both already deep in it. And there was no turning back. The night it all changed started like any other. The same sounds filled the house. The hum of the fridge, the distant chatter from Liam's room, and the quiet clicking of my keyboard. I'd been trying to focus, trying to push away the thoughts that had been creeping into my mind more and more these past few days. But there was something different in the air that night, something I couldn't ignore, no matter how hard I tried. The house had always been my quiet refuge. It was a place where I could be myself, tucked away in my room with my music, my books, my thoughts. But now, with Liam here, everything felt different. His presence filled the house, and as much as I resisted it, I felt it too. The tension between us had been building slowly, like the quiet pressure before a storm. Every time I saw him, my heart would race. And every time he touched me, even by accident, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting between us. That night, as I lay in bed, I tried to push the thoughts aside. The sound of Liam laughing through the walls was like background noise to my racing thoughts. I closed my eyes, hoping to sleep, hoping for some quiet in my mind. But instead, I was left wide awake, staring at the ceiling, my heart beating faster with every passing minute. There was a pressure in my chest, a weight I couldn't explain, and I couldn't help but wonder, what was this feeling? Then, Without warning, sleep took me. And it was in my sleep that everything I had been hiding from myself came rushing forward. In the dream, I could feel him, Liam, so close, his warmth enveloping me, his presence so strong that it almost felt real. His fingers brushed against my skin, light but intentional. My heart thudded in my chest as I reached for him, my fingers grazing his. His eyes were dark, searching mine, as if he was trying to tell me something. Something I didn't fully understand but felt deep inside. I awoke with a start, the dream still lingering, the echo of his touch still on my skin. I lay there in the dark, my breath shallow, my mind reeling. I didn't know what to do with what I had just felt. It wasn't just a dream. It was real. In that brief moment, I had felt everything. The attraction, the confusion, the undeniable connection. It was all there, laid bare in a way I couldn't ignore. I told myself it was just a dream. Just a random collection of thoughts my mind had woven together. But the truth was, it felt more than that. It felt like something my subconscious had been trying to tell me for days, something I had been denying. The way he looked at me, the way he touched me without even realizing it, the way he made me feel. There was something undeniable between us, something I couldn't explain, and certainly didn't want to face. The next morning I tried to brush it off. I went through the motions of my day, hoping the feeling would fade, hoping that maybe it was just a fleeting moment of weakness. But when I walked into the kitchen, there he was, Liam, standing by the counter, his shirt hanging loosely over his frame, a cup of coffee in his hand. His hair was messy, his eyes half-lidded from just waking up. And for a moment, the world stopped. He looked at me as I walked in, that familiar grin tugging at the corner of his lips. "Sleep okay?" he asked, his voice still rough from sleep. I nodded, my mind still heavy with the remnants of the dream. But there was something about the way he looked at me, something in his eyes that made my stomach twist. It wasn't the usual playful glint. It was softer, almost searching. And in that moment, I couldn't help but wonder if he had felt it too. The dream, the tension, the weight of everything that was hanging between us. I tried to ignore it, to focus on the mundane details of the morning, making coffee, eating breakfast, pretending that nothing had changed. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. The way he was standing a little too close, the way his gaze lingered just a little too long. I felt it in my chest, in my bones, that this was no longer just about sharing space. This was something more. The day passed in a blur, the usual noises of our lives blending into one long stream of moments that felt increasingly charged. Every time Liam was near, I could feel the pull between us, a magnetic force I couldn't escape. The quiet moments we shared, when he sat next to me, when our shoulders brushed, when our eyes locked in a silent conversation that neither of us fully understood, were becoming harder to ignore. And then came the moment that sealed it. The moment when everything I had been avoiding came rushing to the surface, all at once. That night, after a quiet dinner, we found ourselves sitting together in the living room, watching a movie. It was the kind of movie I always liked, slow, emotional, subtle. Liam had teased me about it, but he didn't complain. He just sat there beside me, the weight of his presence so close that it was almost too much to bear. We sat there in silence, watching the screen, but the tension between us was palpable. Every time our hands brushed, every time our legs bumped accidentally, I could feel the heat between us. It was like we were both trying to ignore it, trying to pretend that nothing had changed, but the air was thick with unspoken words. And then, Just as the credits began to roll, Liam leaned in, just slightly, enough to feel his breath against my ear. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, but inside, I was anything but okay. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening between us, something that neither of us could control. The distance between us was shrinking, and I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know if I even wanted to, but Liam didn't wait for me to respond. Instead, he stayed there, just a little too close, his body pressed up against mine. I could feel the warmth of his skin, the slow rhythm of his breathing. And for a moment, I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or if this was real. Was he really here, so close to me? Was this really happening? The tension had reached its breaking point. We sat there, neither of us speaking, but both of us fully aware of what was happening. And I realized in that moment that I couldn't keep pretending that I didn't feel it. I couldn't keep pretending that nothing had changed. Because everything had changed, and there was no going back. When I looked at him, I saw it in his eyes. The same confusion, the same fear, the same longing. And for the first time, neither of us looked away. There was no more pretending. There was only the truth between us, raw and unspoken. In that moment, everything was clear. The dream, the tension, the unspoken bond. It was all leading to this. The night that had started like any other had now become the turning point. The beginning of something neither of us fully understood, but both of us felt. And there was no turning back now. What happens next? I couldn't say. But I knew deep down that this was just the beginning of something bigger, something we couldn't control. And as the night stretched on, and the weight of what had just happened settled between us, I realized one thing. We couldn't hide from this anymore. Whatever this was, whatever it would become, we were both in it together, and there was no way out. There are moments in life when the weight of silence becomes too heavy to bear. And the only way to truly understand what's happening between two people, what's really going on, is to strip away the facades, the distractions, and the fear. It's not easy. It's vulnerable. But sometimes, those are the moments that change everything. Liam and I had reached one of those moments. After days of tension, of pretending we didn't feel the pull between us, the truth had finally settled in. We couldn't go on ignoring it. We couldn't keep dancing around what was becoming so clear. That night, when the world outside was quiet, when the rest of our lives seemed to fade into the background, Liam and I found ourselves in a place where the unspoken could no longer be left unsaid. It started with a simple question, one that could have been brushed off with a joke, one that could have been ignored like everything else had been. But the look in Liam's eyes, the way he lingered in the doorway, the way he seemed to hesitate, it was clear this was different. He wasn't running away from this anymore, and neither was I. "You ever feel like you're always performing?" he asked, his voice low, almost hesitant, as if he wasn't sure he was even allowed to ask the question. It was a question that resonated deep inside me. A question I didn't even realize I had been asking myself for so long. It was one of those thoughts that, when it finally leaves your mouth, you wonder why it took you so long to say it. I knew exactly what he meant. It wasn't just about pretending for other people, playing a part. It was about the masks we wear in our own lives, the walls we put up to protect ourselves from getting too close. The walls that, in some cases, keep us from really knowing who we are. I nodded, trying not to let my voice crack as I answered. "Yeah, all the time." His eyes softened, and for a brief moment there was no more space between us. No more distance, just two people, raw and honest, standing in the same room, trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense at all. We stood there for a while, the silence between us almost too much to handle. But neither of us moved. There was a kind of understanding in that stillness, a quiet connection that was deeper than any words could describe. It was in the way he was looking at me, like he was seeing me, not just the version I showed to the world, but the version I had been hiding even from myself. "I don't know if I've ever felt like I can just be," Liam said quietly, running a hand through his hair, his gaze dropping to the floor. "Like, I'm always the guy everyone expects me to be, the one who's always got the jokes, the charm. But it's exhausting. I'm tired of pretending." His words hit me harder than I expected, because I knew exactly what he meant. For so long, I'd lived in my own bubble, hiding behind my routines, my solitude, my quiet. And maybe, just maybe, I was tired of pretending too. Tired of pretending I didn't feel the pull between us. Tired of pretending that nothing had changed. And that was the moment when everything shifted. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I could see it in his eyes. He was afraid. Afraid of what he felt, afraid of what it meant, afraid of what was coming next. But there was something else too, a kind of relief, like he had finally let go of the weight he'd been carrying for so long. "I don't know what this is," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't feel weird around you, even when we're just sitting in silence. I don't feel like I have to be someone else." And that's new for me. I didn't know what to say to that. What do you say when someone tells you they feel like they can be themselves around you? When the walls come down, when the pretense disappears, and you're left with the truth of who you both really are. I swallowed hard, my chest tightening with 1,000 unspoken words. And that's when I realized it wasn't just him, it was me too. I had been so caught up in the idea of what I was supposed to feel, in the confusion of it all, that I had been ignoring my own truth. I was afraid too, afraid of the connection between us, afraid of where it was leading, and afraid of the consequences of what might happen if we didn't stop pretending. But we couldn't stop pretending. Not anymore. I took a deep breath, gathering the courage to speak the truth that had been sitting in my chest for so long. "I see you," I said softly, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. "Not the version you show everyone else, just you." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of everything we had both been hiding. And for a long moment, Liam didn't say anything. He just stared at me, his eyes searching mine like he was trying to find the answer to a question neither of us had dared to ask out loud until now. "I don't know what this means," he said finally, his voice low, almost uncertain. "I just know that it doesn't feel wrong. It feels right, and I don't want to ignore it anymore." I could feel my heart racing in my chest, every beat echoing through the silence between us. And for the first time, I didn't feel afraid. Not of the feelings I had been hiding, not of what this connection between us meant, and not of the uncertainty that lay ahead. I felt free, like the truth had finally been laid bare, and there was no turning back. "We can't keep pretending," I whispered. "Not anymore." And just like that, the tension broke. The walls that had been keeping us apart, the fear that had been holding us back, all came crashing down. What came next was unknown, but for the first time, I didn't care. I wasn't afraid of where this might lead, because the truth was, we were both here, together, facing it, whatever it was. We didn't know what the future held, We didn't know what would happen tomorrow or the day after. But in that moment, in the quiet of the room, with the weight of our unspoken truths between us, all I knew was this: we were no longer pretending. And that, for now, was enough. As the night went on, we didn't talk about what had just happened. We didn't have to. We just let it sit there, unspoken, but understood. We didn't have all the answers, and we didn't need them. Sometimes, the questions are just as important as the answers, because they lead us to the places we're meant to be. And right now, this was the place we were meant to be. Together, in the quiet, sharing the vulnerability we had been hiding for so long. The truth was, I didn't know what would happen next, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. Because whatever this was, whatever it could become, we were in it together, and that was enough. For now. There are moments in life that change everything. Moments where you feel like the entire universe is holding its breath, waiting for you to make a choice. And then, in an instant, it's over. A decision has been made, and from that point forward, everything is different. For me, that moment came when the walls we'd built up between us, all the unspoken things, all the hesitations, all the confusion crumbled in a split second. It wasn't a loud crash. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't something anyone else would notice. But to me, it felt like the world shifted. And it all started with one simple, yet impossible, act. A kiss. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something I thought about for days, weighing the consequences in my head, trying to make sense of what it meant. No, it just happened. In that moment, everything I had been holding back, everything Liam had been holding back, all came pouring out. And we were both left standing on the edge of something bigger than either of us could have anticipated. We had been dancing around it for days. No, for weeks. Each of us unsure. Each of us feeling something we couldn't quite name. There were the small moments that made my heart race. The way he would brush past me. How his hand would linger on my back a moment longer than it should have. The way his eyes would meet mine and hold for just a beat too long. Every time I told myself it didn't mean anything, that it was just him being him, just Liam being his usual charming self. But deep down, I knew it meant more than that. I knew it the moment he leaned a little too close, the moment his breath brushed against my skin. I knew it when he smiled at me, not the playful grin, but something softer, more real, something that made me wonder if maybe he felt the same pull, but I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to admit that what I was feeling wasn't just some passing moment. That maybe, just maybe, what was happening between us was something deeper, something more. And then the words, his words, the ones he had kept inside for so long. "I don't feel weird around you," he said, his voice low, like he was testing the air, as if he wasn't sure if he should even be saying it aloud. "I see you. Not the version you show everyone else, just you." Those words hit me harder than I ever expected, because the truth was, I didn't want to hide anymore either. I didn't want to pretend that nothing was changing, that we weren't slowly and quietly becoming something neither of us had the courage to acknowledge until that moment. But it didn't stop there. It couldn't. The air between us was thick, electric, charged with everything we hadn't said until now. It was like something inside of me was waking up, something I had been hiding from for so long, something I wasn't sure I was ready to face. But at the same time, I knew I had no choice. We couldn't keep pretending. Not anymore. I remember the silence that followed his admission. Not awkward, not uncomfortable, but heavy, full of meaning. I was still trying to catch my breath, still trying to figure out what to do with all these feelings that had been bubbling to the surface. But then, before I even knew it, he was right there, closer than he'd ever been. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body, hear the soft rhythm of his breath. And then it happened. He leaned in, and without thinking, without a word between us, we kissed. It wasn't a kiss of urgency, or lust, or passion. It was tentative, almost fragile, like we were both testing the waters, unsure of what it meant, but desperate to know. Our lips met softly, carefully, a question hanging in the air between us. A question we had both been too afraid to ask until now. What does this mean? The world seemed to pause, holding its breath, as if waiting for us to make a decision. I could feel the moment stretching out, like time had slowed down, like nothing else existed but the two of us, standing there, in this space we had created. There was no right answer. There was no easy way forward. But for the first time, I wasn't scared of what would happen next. The kiss was soft, slow, and filled with uncertainty. But it was also filled with something else, something I couldn't ignore. Maybe it was the way his fingers brushed against my cheek, or the way his lips parted just enough to let me in. Maybe it was the way I could feel his heartbeat against mine, like we were sharing the same pulse, the same breath. And when he pulled back, I saw it in his eyes. The same thing I had been feeling, the same uncertainty, the same question. He wasn't sure what it meant either, but we both knew it couldn't be undone. It had happened. We had crossed that line. And there was no turning back. "I don't know what this means," he whispered, his voice shaky, as if the weight of his own words had caught him off guard. "But I'm not sorry." Not at all. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. The words, his words, had settled deep inside me, grounding me in this moment. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't wrong. It wasn't anything either of us had expected. But it was real. "I don't know what it means either," I said softly, my voice barely audible, my hand instinctively reaching for his. But I don't want to pretend it didn't happen. I don't want to walk away from this. For a second, everything hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths and questions we didn't have the answers to. But that was okay. For the first time, I didn't need the answers. I didn't need everything to make sense. I just needed him to be here, with me, in this moment. He didn't say anything in response. He didn't need to. Instead, he kissed me again. This time it was deeper. No more hesitation, no more doubt. Just two people finally letting go of everything that had been holding them back. And in that kiss, everything changed. The tension that had been building between us for so long broke open, like a dam finally giving way. I could feel the flood of emotions rushing to the surface. Emotions I didn't know how to handle. But for the first time, I wasn't trying to control them. I was just letting them be, letting myself be. We pulled away again, but this time there was no confusion. There was no uncertainty, just a quiet understanding between us. We didn't need to talk about it. We didn't need to label it. We didn't need to explain ourselves. What had happened between us was real, and that was enough for now. The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't filled with doubt. It was peaceful, content, like we both knew exactly where we stood, together, in this moment. And that was all that mattered. But even in that quiet, even as we lay there, tangled in each other's arms, I knew something else was coming. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be without its challenges. But right then, right there, I didn't care. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what would happen next. And neither was Liam. We had crossed a line, and now we would have to face whatever came next. But for now, we had each other. And that was enough. In the wake of that kiss, the silence between us felt different, heavier, almost like the air itself was holding its breath, unsure of what was coming next. The questions lingered, unspoken but present in every glance, every moment of shared silence. What did it mean? What was I supposed to do with this newfound connection? And perhaps most importantly, what did Liam feel? We hadn't said much in the hours that followed. It wasn't that we didn't want to talk. It was just that the words didn't seem to fit anymore. How could we talk about something so monumental, so fragile, without breaking it? The world outside of that room seemed so distant now, so irrelevant compared to the storm of emotions swirling between us. The weight of what had just happened was enough to make everything else feel insignificant, like nothing could matter more than this uncertain, fragile moment we were in. But despite the silence, despite the weight of everything we hadn't said, there was also a sense of understanding, a quiet acknowledgement that we had crossed a line, one that couldn't be uncrossed. Neither of us knew what would come of it, but in that moment, it didn't feel important. What mattered was that we had both felt it, that pull, that undeniable force that had drawn us together in ways we couldn't explain. The questions, though, still hovered in the background. What now? What did this mean for us? For our relationship? The uncertainty was suffocating at times, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were both standing at a crossroads. The world around us felt like it was on pause, waiting for us to make a choice. We couldn't go back to the way things were before. That was clear. But moving forward wasn't easy either. The fear of what could happen next, of what we could lose, loomed over me like a cloud I couldn't escape. How could we navigate this? How could we figure out what this connection meant when we both had so many things to lose? I found myself asking more questions than I had answers for. What if this was just a moment? A fleeting thing that wouldn't stand the test of time? What if one of us regretted it, wished we could undo everything that had just unfolded? What if we couldn't face the world together? What if after all this things became too complicated? And yet, despite all the uncertainty, there was a small, quiet part of me that held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, we were ready to face whatever came next. I didn't have all the answers, and I didn't expect to. Life doesn't work like that. Relationships don't work like that. But there was something about Liam, about this connection between us, that made me believe it was worth exploring, worth risking. In the days that followed, we didn't talk about it much. There were no big revelations, no dramatic confessions. Instead, we moved around each other in a way that felt different, subtle, quiet. The silence between us was no longer filled with confusion or fear. It was filled with something else, something unspoken, but understood. The kind of silence that comes when two people share a secret, a bond, something only they can understand. But even as we moved through those days, as we shared stolen moments and quiet touches, the questions lingered. What did the future hold for us? Were we willing to step into the unknown, to explore this connection further? The road ahead was unclear, and there were moments when I wondered if we were both too scared to walk down it together. But there was also the undeniable truth. We couldn't pretend anymore. Not to ourselves, and not to each other. It wasn't just about the kiss anymore. It was about everything that came after. The vulnerability, the honesty, the fear, and the hope. It was about the quiet moments we shared, the things we didn't say but both understood. And as much as I feared what could come next, there was also something exciting about it, the possibility of something real. Something that couldn't be defined by the rules we had always lived by. So, we kept moving forward, one step at a time, not knowing what the future held, but knowing that, at least for now, we were both willing to take that next step together. And as I lay there that night, my thoughts heavy with uncertainty, I realized that the hardest part wasn't the fear of what could happen. It was the fear of not knowing, the fear of living with the questions, of never knowing what could have been if we had taken that leap, if we had embraced what was between us. The truth was, we were both standing at the edge of something unknown, and maybe that was okay. Maybe the uncertainty wasn't something to fear, but something to embrace. Because sometimes, the scariest paths lead to the most unexpected places. And sometimes, the things that feel impossible, the things that challenge us the most, are the ones worth fighting for. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't ready to walk away from this. From him, from whatever it was we were starting to build. And maybe that's all that mattered. For now, I wasn't going to worry about the answers. I wasn't going to let the uncertainty hold me back. Because sometimes, the most beautiful things in life come from the unknown. And the only way to see where this journey would take us was to keep moving forward, together. The uncertainty, the questions, they were still there. Yet, there was something different now. A shift, subtle but undeniable between us. It was like the world had slowed down, giving us space to breathe, to think, to realize that maybe, just maybe, we didn't need all the answers to move forward. For so long, we had been stuck in this silent tension, unable to acknowledge what was between us. But now, with every passing day, that weight felt lighter. It didn't mean all the answers had fallen into place. Far from it. But there was a quiet promise in the air, an understanding that we didn't need to have everything figured out. Not right away, not even in the near future. What we needed was the courage to move forward, even when the path ahead was uncertain. I had spent so much time trying to control everything, trying to predict what would happen next, trying to understand every piece of this complicated puzzle. But now, I could feel something shifting. I wasn't trying to figure it out anymore. I was allowing myself to just feel, to experience what was happening between us without needing to put a label on it, without needing to know what the outcome would be. And maybe that was the key. Sometimes the most beautiful things in life aren't the ones that can be neatly packaged into a box, labeled, and easily understood. Sometimes they're the things that catch you off guard. The moments that leave you breathless. The connections that feel so real, so deep, that they defy all logic and explanation. In those quiet, shared moments between us, I could feel the promise of something real. Something that wasn't based on the past, on old definitions of what a relationship should be, but on the here and now. Something raw and authentic, grounded in the present. The beauty of it was in its imperfection, in its messiness. And that was exactly what made it so powerful. Liam and I, we didn't need to have everything figured out. We didn't need to know where we were headed. We just needed to be honest with each other. Honest about the way we felt. Honest about the uncertainty we shared. And honest about the fact that no matter how much fear we felt, we weren't ready to walk away. There was something freeing in that. To be able to admit to ourselves that we didn't have control over the future. That we couldn't predict how things would turn out. And yet, in that uncertainty, there was a sense of peace. because we were finally willing to embrace it. We were willing to step into the unknown, knowing that whatever came next, we would face it together. It wasn't about rushing into anything. It wasn't about forcing something to happen. It was about allowing things to unfold naturally, without trying to shape them into something they weren't. It was about allowing ourselves the space to explore, to be vulnerable, to grow. The promise of something real wasn't a guarantee that everything would be easy, that there wouldn't be struggles, or that we wouldn't be faced with challenges. But it was a promise that we would be there for each other, that we would continue to move forward, together, even when things got complicated. And that, in itself, was something worth holding on to. I didn't need to know the final destination. The journey, with all its twists and turns, was enough. It was enough to know that I wasn't alone, that we were in this together, navigating the unknown side by side. And maybe that was the most important thing of all. As we moved forward, I realized that the future wasn't something to fear. It was something to embrace, not because it would be easy, but because it would be real. And that, after everything we had been through, was enough. So, here we were, standing at the beginning of something new, something uncharted. The uncertainty was still there, but it didn't feel as heavy anymore. We had the promise of something real, something worth pursuing. And that was enough to carry us forward, even when the road ahead was unclear. And in that moment, as we stood together, I knew one thing for sure. Whatever came next, I was ready for it, because I wasn't walking this road alone anymore. And maybe that was all we really needed to know. The silence between us feels different now, heavier, filled with things we haven't said, but both know are there. It's a quiet promise, a promise that things can change, even if we don't have all the answers yet. We're still standing at the edge of something new, a place we've never been before. It's unclear, yes, but there's something beautiful about the uncertainty, the way it draws us closer, not apart. We don't know what's coming, but that's okay. Sometimes, it's the not knowing that makes the moments feel more real, more raw. We're not rushing. There's no need to label what we have, no need to put it into a box, because the truth is, it doesn't need a label. It's real, even without a name. This connection, this feeling, it doesn't need to be explained or understood by anyone but us. It's our journey, one that we're still figuring out, one step at a time. And even though the road ahead may seem uncertain, the one thing I'm sure of is that I don't want to walk it alone. We've crossed a line, something that can't be undone. But sometimes, crossing lines is how we grow. It's how we find out what we're truly capable of, what we truly feel. We've broken the silence that had once kept us apart. And now, we're standing in this quiet space together. A space where nothing feels forced, where every moment feels like it's meant to be. The future is unknown, but I'm not afraid of it. Not anymore. Because I know that whatever comes next, we're stronger for having crossed this line. We've found something deeper, something more real than we could have imagined before. And even though the world may not understand, maybe it doesn't have to. It's our story, and we're the ones living it. So what happens next? Maybe we don't have all the answers, but that's part of the beauty. The journey isn't about having everything figured out. It's about taking the first step, then the next, and trusting that we'll be okay. Together. The promise isn't in the destination. It's in the fact that we're walking this road, side by side, no matter where it leads. And for now, that's enough. So let's keep moving forward. Let's embrace the uncertainty, knowing that it's leading us somewhere worth going. Because no matter what comes next, we'll face it with open hearts, ready for whatever is to come. And sometimes, that quiet promise of what's to come is all we need to keep going.